The most dangerous predator in the known universe needed the deadliest prey in the known universe, a human being. Jesse Ramos nursed his drink inside a seedy bar on Terok Nor Station. The establishment smelled of spilled liquor and desperation. Dim lights flickered. The Bajoran waitress wordlessly topped off Ramos's glass of Andorian whiskey. A tall figure clad in a dark cloak approached Ramos's table. "Jesse Ramos?" Ramos merely grunted an acknowledgement, his eyes still fixed on his drink. The figure removed his hood, revealing grey reptilian skin, cold blue eyes, and a cruel smirk. "I am Gul Linux of the Cardassian Central Command. The survival of our entire empire depends on your special skills." Linux took a seat across from Ramos. The Cardassian Union faces annihilation at the hands of an alien warlord named Zorgax. This brute has amassed a coalition of savage species, armed with weapons that render our mighty fleets defenseless. But Zorgax has a weakness: his ego. The fiend surrounds himself with trophies and sycophants at his fortress on planet Vokra. That's where you come in. Ramos chuckled. "You overgrown lizards need a human to clean up your mess. That's got a sting." Linux's eyes narrowed. "Do not underestimate Zorgax. But yes, we require your kind's unique talents, your unpredictable cunning, raw tenacity. No Cardassian could infiltrate his lair. But a human, the most dangerous, adaptable predator in the galaxy? Zorgax's head will be your trophy." Ramos finished his drink in one large gulp. "I'll need weapons, a ship, and enough latinum to retire on." Linux flashed a predatory grin. "Kill Zorgax and you'll have all that and more. But fail and the Cardassian Empire falls, with the rest of the Alpha Quadrant soon to follow. So for once in your misbegotten existence, don't screw this up, human." As Linux disappeared into the crowded bar, Ramos smirked, relishing the impossible challenge ahead. Linux led Ramos onto a sleek Cardassian ship, bristling with advanced weaponry and cloaking tech. Settling into the cockpit, Linux explained, "Our mission begins with gathering intel on Zorgax. We need his location and how to get close." Ramos strapped himself in as the ship lifted off. "Where to first?" "An old Ferengi trading post near Zorgax's territory. Home to Grexa, an arms dealer with ties to the warlord." The ship streaked across the stars, its reflective hull blending into the void of space. It docked at a grimy, dimly lit space station. Ramos tugged on a shady outfit, looking like a rough arms trader. "Let's find this Grexar guy." Ramos waded through a rowdy crowd in the station's bar, spotting a hulking Nausicaan in the corner. He approached the table. "I'm looking for Grexar." The Nausicaan eyed him. "Who's asking?" In a flash, Ramos drew a jagged dagger from his boot and sent it flying. It embedded in the wall, nearly slicing the Nausicaan's ear. Ramos smirked. "Someone who doesn't like to wait." Grexar emerged from the shadows, chuckling. "An arms dealer who knows his way around a blade. I'm Grexar. What's your business?" They sat, and Ramos laid out exotic weapon schematics. "Impressive," Grexar said. "I may have a big buyer for this tech, a top dog in Zorgax's crew." Suddenly, a crew of angry trills stormed in, bounty hunters from Ramos's past. "There's Ramos, he owes us his head." Ramos and Linux dove for cover, as disruptor blasts scorched the bar. Ramos winged the lead trill, sending the gang scattering. Ramos called to Grexar, "If I get out of this, tell your pal I'm interested." Ramos and Linux battled their way back to the ship, blasting off. Ramos punched the console. "Damn, that was too close." Linux frowned. "Indeed, and it's clear my people's intel on Zorgax lacks crucial details. We cannot depend on it." Ramos sighed. "Figures. Looks like if we're going to pull this off, I'll have to do what I do best. Wing it and hope for a miracle. Just another day in the life of Jesse Ramos." Following the lead from Grexar, Jesse and Linux set their course for the war-ravaged planet of Tukanka, deep in the lawless terminus systems. Intel pointed to Erdnot Reeve, one of Zorgax's most brutal lieutenants, operating a mercenary outfit there. Jesse pored over Krogan cultural databases. To get close to Reeve, he'd need to walk the walk. The ship touched down on the barren surface. Jesse emerged clad head to toe in battle-scarred Krogan armor, his face obscured behind a menacing helmet. He stomped into Reeves' bustling camp, shouldering past bellowing warriors. A burly Krogan guard blocked his path. "You lost, runt!" Jesse headbutted the guard square in the face, dropping him like a sack of rocks. "I'm here to see Reeve. Got a problem with that?" Reeves' booming laughter echoed as he lumbered over. "You got a quad, stranger. What do you want?" Jesse squared up to the towering Krogan. "Name's Ramos. Best bounty hunter in the Terminus. I'm offering my services for the right price." "Is that so?" Reeve grinned, all teeth. "You'll have to prove your worth." Jesse cracked his neck. "Thought you'd never ask." They squared off in the fighting pit, circled by roaring mercs. Jesse dodged Reeves' hammering blows, his human reflexes giving him an edge. He countered with brutal strikes to the gaps in Reeves' plating. Reeve charged, but Jesse rolled aside, smashing the Krogan's knee. As Reeve stumbled, Jesse leapt onto his back, locking in a chokehold. Reeve thrashed, but Jesse held fast, squeezing until the warlord slumped unconscious. The Krogan horde cheered as Jesse raised his fists in victory. Reeve, shamed, had no choice but to accept him. That night, over Rincol, a drunken Reeve let slip a vital detail. Zorgax would be meeting the Batarians soon to seal an alliance. Jesse and Linux blasted off with their new Krogan shock troops in tow, racing to intercept Zorgax. But as the Batarian station loomed into view, Jesse's console pinged. A message from his brother. Jesse closed his eyes, his chest tight. The fate of the galaxy or his own flesh and blood. He had to choose, and damn the consequences. Jesse stared out the viewport, his brother's message echoing in his mind. Linux placed a hand on his shoulder. "You seem troubled, Ramos. What's on your mind?" With a heavy sigh, Jesse turned to face Linux. "My brother contacted me. Our mother's ill, and he wants me to come home." Linux's expression softened. "I understand the pull of family, Ramos. My own past is complicated, but the bonds of blood are not easily broken." As they talked, sharing stories of their families and the paths that led them to this moment, a new respect formed between the human and the Cardassian. They were more alike than either had realized. Refocused on their mission, Jesse and Linux docked at the Batarian station. Clad in the finest armor credits could buy, they strode through the airlock as representatives of a powerful arms manufacturer. "You there?" A Batarian guard blocked their path. "State your business." Jesse flashed a disarming smile. "Gentlemen, please. We've come a long way to showcase our latest weapons tech to your esteemed leaders." With a judicious application of bribes and veiled threats, they maneuvered through the station's hierarchy. Linux's keen mind and Jesse's roguish charm proved a potent combination. At last they reached the meeting room where Zorgax was due to arrive. Jesse's hand hovered over his concealed blaster, ready to strike. Suddenly, a deafening blast rocked the station. Alarms blared as Batarians scrambled in panic. Through the smoke, Jesse glimpsed a familiar figure darting away. Kravas, his old Turian nemesis, long thought dead. "Linux, it's Kravas." Jesse sprinted after the assassin, realizing Zorgax must have hired him to eliminate loose ends. They raced through twisting corridors, trading shots with Kravas's deadly aim. Linux's tech skills sealed blast doors to block the Turians' escape. Cornered, Kravas spun to face them, mandibles flared in a vicious grin. "You've got it all wrong, Ramos. Zorgax is just a puppet. The real threat is much closer to home." "Enough riddles." Jesse leveled his blaster at Kravas. "What are you talking about?" The Turian laughed, a grating sound. "The Cardassians, you fool, they're playing you. Zorgax's invasion is just the beginning of their plans, and you're helping them." Jesse's finger tightened on the trigger, his mind racing. If Kravas was telling the truth, then everything he thought he knew was a lie, and the real enemy was standing right beside him. Jesse's blaster remained fixed on Kravas as the Turian's words sank in like a blade. His mind raced. The Cardassians had played him for a fool. The ground seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Suddenly another explosion rocked the station, sending shrapnel slicing through the air. Kravis seized the distraction, diving for cover as Jesse squeezed off a shot that barely missed. "Ramos, we need to move," Linux shouted over the blaring alarms. Gritting his teeth, Jesse lowered his weapon and sprinted after Linux. Fires raged through the corridors, the acrid smoke stinging their eyes. They weaved through panicked Batarians, dodging falling debris. At last they reached the airlock. Linux's fingers flew over the controls. The outer doors slid open, revealing their waiting ship. They leapt across the threshold as a wall of flame roared behind them. The ship tore away from the disintegrating station, plunging into the star-flecked void. Jesse sagged against the bulkhead, his chest heaving. Linux set a course for a nearby asteroid field where they could regroup in safety. As the adrenaline ebbed, Jesse fixed Linux with a piercing stare. "All right, Scales, start talking. How much did you know about this Cardassian conspiracy?" Linux met his gaze, his eyes heavy. I had my suspicions, pieces that didn't quite fit, but I never imagined the rot went so deep." He shook his head. "I swear to you, Ramos, I am not your enemy." Jesse searched the Cardassian's face, looking for any hint of deception. At last he nodded. "Okay, I believe you, but if we're going to get to the bottom of this, we need a plan." They huddled over the star charts, tracing threads of corruption that seemed to span the galaxy. "I have contacts in the Cardassian High Command," Linux said. "I can try to learn more, but I'll have to tread carefully." "In the meantime," Jesse replied, "I need to head back to Earth. Rally some backup from my old Alliance buddies." With a course set, they shook hands, an understanding passing between them. The odds were long, but they would see this through to whatever end. The blue-green orb of Earth filled the view screen as Jesse's ship sliced through the atmosphere. He set down in San Francisco, the foggy spires of Starfleet HQ rising to greet him. His boots crunched on the pavement as he strode through the gates, ignoring the startled looks from fresh-faced cadets. He made straight for the office of Commander Mateo Ramos, his older brother. "Jesse?" Mateo looked up from a stack of reports, his eyebrows climbing. "What are you doing here?" Jesse cut straight to the chase. The Milky Way is about to go up in flames, and the Cardassians are the ones holding the match. "Zorgax, the invasion, all of it. It's a false flag. The Cardis are using him to make a power grab." "That's a hell of an accusation." Mateo leaned back, crossing his arms. "I hope you have proof." Jesse slapped a data chip on the desk. Kravis, an assassin. He spilled the whole story. Mateo slotted the chip into his console, his eyes widening as he scanned the contents. Slowly he looked up at Jesse, his expression grim. "If this is true—" "It is, and we need to act fast. I need a team, Mateo, the best of the best." Mateo nodded, already reaching for his comm. "I'll make some calls. The Cardassians won't know what hit them." Light years away on Cardassia Prime, Linux stalked through the halls of power, his eyes and ears attuned to every whisper. Fragments of conversations drifted to him, hinting at schemes within schemes. He accessed sealed files, peeling back layers of encryption. The secrets he uncovered chilled him to the bone. The rot was everywhere, tendrils of corruption strangling the very heart of the Union. At the center of the web sat a figure cloaked in shadow, a master puppeteer known only as the Overseer. Every string led back to them. Linux downloaded the data, his jaw set with determination. It was time to bring this conspiracy into the light. On a dusty, barren moon far from the prying eyes of civilization, Jesse and Linux rendezvoused with their new allies. The Cardassian's eyes gleamed with a mix of anticipation and trepidation as he shook hands with Zix, the enigmatic Geth hacker. "I've heard great things about your skills," Linux said. "We're going to need every advantage to pull this off." Zix's mechanical voice held a hint of amusement. "The Overseer has made many enemies. It will be a pleasure to help bring about his downfall." Jesse pored over schematics of the Citadel with his team of hand-picked Systems Alliance operatives, veterans of countless covert missions. He jabbed a finger at the main chamber. This is where the coronation will take place. Zorgax will be at his most vulnerable, surrounded by his sycophants and the Cardassian elite. We'll need to strike hard and fast. The team spent the next several days training and strategizing, honing their skills, and familiarizing themselves with the Citadel's labyrinthine layout. Jesse and Linux sparred in the crimson light of the alien sun, their movements fluid and lethal. At last, the day of the coronation arrived. The team boarded a nondescript freighter, posing as a diplomatic envoy from a minor system. As they approached the massive space station, Zix's fingers danced over a console, slicing through layer after layer of security. The freighter docked without incident, and the team slipped into the bowels of the Citadel like wraiths. Jesse led them through winding service corridors, his old mercenary instincts guiding them past patrols and checkpoints. They emerged in the shadows of the main chamber, just as Zorgax strode onto the raised dais. The warlord was resplendent in his battle armor, his cruel eyes surveying the assembled dignitaries. At his right hand stood the overseer, a cold smile playing at his lips. Linux tensed at the sight of his father, his grip tightening on his weapon. As the ceremony began, Jesse gave the signal. The team burst from cover, weapons blazing. The chamber erupted into chaos as Zorgax's guards and the Cardassian soldiers opened fire. Jesse and his operatives pushed forward, cutting a swath through the enemy ranks. Linux sprinted for the dais, his eyes locked on the overseer. "Father," he shouted over the din of battle, "your treachery ends here." The overseer sneered, drawing his own weapon. "You always were a disappointment, Linux, too weak to seize true power." They clashed in a flurry of blows, their blades sparking. Linux fought with the skill of a master duelist, but the overseer's cybernetic enhancements gave him an edge. Just as the older Cardassian gained the upper hand, Jesse leapt into the fray. He engaged the overseer in a whirlwind of strikes and parries, his human reflexes more than a match for the traitor's augmented speed. Zorgax, meanwhile, found himself beset on all sides. His bodyguards fell one by one to the Systems Alliance operatives' relentless assault. The warlord roared in fury, realizing the depth of the overseer's betrayal. In a stunning turn of events, Zorgax barreled across the chamber, smashing into the overseer with all his might. Jesse and Linux seized the opportunity, pressing the attack. The battle raged on. The unlikely alliance of human, Cardassian, and alien warlord pitted against the treacherous overseer and his remaining forces. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance as they clashed amid the smoke and blood of the once grand chamber. With the battle reaching a fever pitch, Jesse and Linux locked eyes, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They turned as one to face Zorgax, weapons raised. The warlord grinned, his fangs glinting in the flickering light. "Well, well," he rumbled, "it seems we have a common enemy." Jesse nodded curtly. "Truce?" Zorgax threw back his head and laughed. "Truce!" The unlikely allies charged into the fray, Zorgax's hulking form clearing a path through the overseer's loyalists. Jesse and his team fanned out, providing cover fire as they advanced. Disruptor blasts sizzled through the air, felling Cardassian guards left and right. Linux fought like a man possessed, his blade a blur as he cut down his former comrades. His face was a mask of fury, the betrayal of his father etched in every line. Zix's fingers danced across his Omni-tool, his hacking skills wreaking havoc on the Citadel's systems. Doors slammed shut, trapping pockets of enemies. Turrets swiveled, mowing down the overseer's forces with ruthless efficiency. Through the smoke and blood, Jesse caught a glimpse of the overseer fleeing the chamber. "Linux!" he shouted. "He's getting away!" The two warriors fought their way to the control room, Zorgax and the Systems Alliance operatives holding the line behind them. They burst through the doors, weapons trained on the overseer. The traitorous Cardassian spun to face them, his eyes wild. "You're too late," he snarled. "The Citadel's power will soon be mine." "Father, please," Linux pleaded, "end this madness." Linux's grip tightened on his blade, his voice shaking with rage. I am nothing like you. The Overseer's hand hovered over the control panel. One last chance, son. Join me, and together we will dominate the galaxy. Linux hesitated, the weight of his heritage bearing down on him. Jesse watched him closely, ready to intervene. Suddenly, the Overseer lunged forward, his fingers clawing for the controls. Jesse reacted instantly, tackling the traitor to the ground. They grappled across the floor, trading brutal blows. The Overseer lashed out with a hidden blade, slicing Jesse's arm. Jesse gritted his teeth, slamming his knee into the Cardassian's gut. The Overseer doubled over, gasping for breath. Lennox snapped out of his reverie, leaping to Jesse's aid. Together they rained down a flurry of punches, driving the Overseer to his knees. With a final, savage blow, Lennox knocked his father unconscious. Panting, Jesse and Lennox stood over the fallen traitor. The control room was silent, save for the distant sounds of battle. Heavy footsteps approached, and Zorgax strode into the room, his armor splattered with blood. He surveyed the scene, his eyes lingering on the Overseer's prone form. "Impressive," he rumbled. "You humans are full of surprises." Zorgax considered for a moment. The Cardassian conspiracy must be exposed. The galaxy must know the truth. Lennox nodded, agreed, but we can't do it alone. Zorgax's eyes gleamed. "I propose an alliance. My forces, your skills, and the Citadel's technology. Together we can bring order to the chaos." Jesse exchanged a glance with Lennox. The idea of working with Zorgax, their former enemy, was unsettling. But the warlord had proven himself in battle, and his resources could be invaluable. "What's in it for you?" Jesse asked, his voice wary. Zorgax grinned. A seat at the table, a chance to shape the future of the galaxy. Jesse and Lennox shared a long look, weighing the risks and rewards. At last, Jesse extended his hand. The warlord clasped Jesse's hand, his grip like iron. "For now," he echoed, his eyes glinting with ambition. As the smoke cleared and the echoes of battle faded, a new chapter in the galaxy's history was about to begin. An unlikely trio of allies, bound by circumstance and necessity, prepared to face the challenges ahead. The road would be long and treacherous, but with the fate of billions hanging in the balance, failure was not an option. Jesse and Lennox stood before the towering spires of the Citadel, the heart of galactic governance. The weight of their evidence pressed against their chests, a ticking bomb that could shatter the fragile peace. They strode into the council chambers, heads held high, ready to face the storm. But the moment they crossed the threshold, the air turned thick with tension. The Asari counselor, her eyes cold and calculating, stepped forward. "Ramos, Lennox, we've been expecting you." Jesse's instinct screamed a warning. This wasn't right. The counselor's tone, the way the other members shifted in their seats, it reeked of a setup. Lennox leaned in close, his voice a low growl. "They're in on it. The Cardassians have gotten to them." Jesse nodded, his jaw tight. They were walking into a den of vipers, but they had no choice. The truth had to come out no matter the cost. They took their places at the center of the chamber, the eyes of the galaxy upon them. Jesse cleared his throat, his voice ringing out strong and clear. "Counselors, we come before you with evidence of a vast conspiracy, one that threatens the very foundation of our galactic society." He laid out the facts, point by point, his words painting a picture of corruption and deceit that stretched from the highest echelons of the Cardassian government to the shadowed corners of the terminus systems. Lennox stood at his side, a silent pillar of support, his presence a reminder of the unlikely alliance that had brought them to this moment. But as they spoke, the counselors' expressions remained impassive. Their eyes glazed with a look that Jesse knew all too well, the look of those who had already made up their minds. The Asari counselor held up a hand, cutting Jesse off mid-sentence. "Enough. These are serious accusations, Ramos. But where is your proof? All we have is the word of a disgraced mercenary and a rogue Cardassian agent." Jesse's blood boiled, but he kept his voice level. "The proof is in the data, Counselor. If you'll just let us—" "I think we've heard enough. the Turian councillor, his voice dripping with disdain. "This council will not be swayed by baseless conspiracy theories and the ravings of criminals." Linux stepped forward, his eyes flashing with anger. "Criminals? We risked our lives to uncover the truth, to save your precious council from—" But the Solarian councillor cut him off with a wave of his hand. "The Cardassian Union is a valued member of the galactic community. We will not stand for these slanderous accusations." Jesse's mind raced, desperate for a way to salvage the situation. But before he could speak, a murmur rippled through the chamber. The councillors' faces paled, their eyes fixed on something behind Jesse and Linux. They turned, and there he was, Zorgax, the Krogan warlord, striding into the chamber like a conquering king. He took his place beside Jesse and Linux, his massive frame dwarfing them both. "Councillors," he rumbled, his voice a deep bass that seemed to shake the very walls. "I come before you not as an enemy, but as an ally. These two have shown me the truth of the Cardassian conspiracy, and I stand with them." The Asari councillor's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that a notorious warlord has had a change of heart? This is absurd." But Zorgax just grinned, his teeth flashing in the light. "Believe what you will, councillor, but know this: if you stand in the way of justice, you stand against me, and that is not a place you want to be." Jesse and Linux exchanged a glance, a flicker of hope sparking between them. With Zorgax at their side, they might just have a chance. But before they could press their advantage, a holoscreen flared to life above the council dais. A face appeared, one that sent a chill down Jesse's spine, the Overseer, his eyes glinting with malice. "Greetings, councillors," he purred, his voice smooth as silk. "I see you've met my little puppets." The chamber erupted into chaos, the councillors shouting over each other, demanding answers. But the Overseer just laughed, a sound that cut through the din like a knife. "Oh, you poor deluded fools. You have no idea what's coming. Even now my agents are in place, ready to strike at the heart of your precious citadel, unless, of course, you meet my demands." Jesse's heart hammered in his chest. They were running out of time. He glanced at Linux and Zorgax, saw the same grim determination etched on their faces. The Overseer had to be stopped, no matter the cost. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out above the tumult. "Overseer, we're not finished, you hear me? This ends now." The Overseer's laughter echoed through the chamber, cold and cruel. The holoscreen flickered and died, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Jesse, Linux, and Zorgax exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They had their work cut out for them. Zix's fingers danced across his Omni-tool, a blur of motion as he worked to slice through the council's defenses. Jesse paced behind him, his nerves stretched taut as a wire. Every second counted. The Overseer's threat hung over them like a blade, ready to fall at any moment. Linux stood at the door, his blaster drawn, watching for any sign of trouble. They'd retreated to a secure location deep within the citadel, a last-ditch effort to uncover the truth before it was too late. "I'm in," Zix said, his voice tense with concentration. "Downloading the files now." Jesse leaned over his shoulder, watching as the data streamed across the screen. His eyes widened as he scanned the names, the dates, the sheer scope of the conspiracy laid bare before him. "It goes all the way to the top," he breathed. "The Overseer's just the tip of the iceberg. The Cardassians have their claws in everything." Linux cursed under his breath. "My own people working to undermine the very fabric of galactic society. It's sickening." Zix's Omni-tool beeped, a harsh, urgent sound. "We've got company. They've traced my hack." "Minutes, maybe less." They worked in silent urgency, copying the files, erasing their tracks. They had to get out, get the truth to someone they could trust. But as they made their way through the winding corridors of the citadel, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Jesse risked a glance over his shoulder, saw the glint of armor, the flash of weapons. "Assassins," he hissed. "The Overseer's not taking any chances." They broke into a run, dodging and weaving through the crowds, their pursuers hot on their heels. Disruptor blasts sizzled past their heads, scorching the walls. Linux returned fire, dropping 2 of the assassins with precise shots. But more kept coming, a relentless tide of death and destruction. Jesse's mind raced, searching for a way out. They were too exposed, too vulnerable. They needed a plan, and fast. Suddenly a voice crackled over their comms, a familiar growl that sent a surge of hope through Jesse's veins. "Ramos, Linux, you there?" It was Zorgax, his voice strained with exertion. "I'm pinned down, got a whole squad of these Cardassian bastards on my tail. Could use a little help." Jesse glanced at Linux, saw the same determination in his eyes. They couldn't leave Zorgax to face the enemy alone, not after all they'd been through together. "We're on our way," Jesse said, his voice grim. "Just hold on." They fought their way through the citadel, blasters blazing, the evidence of the conspiracy clutched tight in their hands. They had the truth now, the power to bring the Overseer and his minions to their knees. But as they neared Zorgax's location, a sinking feeling settled in Jesse's gut. The sounds of battle grew louder, more desperate. They burst into the room, blasters drawn, ready for anything. And there he was, Zorgax, a mountain of a Krogan, surrounded by a sea of fallen enemies. But even he couldn't hold out forever. His armor was scorched and battered, his face twisted with pain and rage. Jesse and Linux leapt into the fray, fighting back to back, a whirlwind of deadly precision. But the assassins kept coming, wave after wave, a relentless tide of death. They were running out of time, running out of options. Jesse's mind raced, searching for a way out. And then he saw it, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. A maintenance hatch half hidden behind a pile of rubble, a way out, a chance to escape and regroup. "There," he shouted, pointing. "We have to go now." Linux nodded, his face grim. They fought their way to the hatch, Zorgax covering their retreat with a roar of defiance. They tumbled through the opening, sealing it behind them with a hiss of hydraulics. For a moment they lay there, gasping for breath, the adrenaline slowly fading from their veins. But they couldn't rest, couldn't let their guard down. The Overseer was still out there, still a threat, and they had a job to do. Jesse hauled himself to his feet, his eyes blazing with determination. "Come on," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "We've got a galaxy to save." They pushed on through the hatch, into the dark tunnels of maintenance shafts and passages, out of sight for now, buying time to prepare for the battle ahead. With a groan, Jesse slumped against the wall, his head throbbing, muscles screaming with exertion. Linux ran a scan on his Omnitool, checking for any sign they'd been followed. "Looks like we lost them for now," he said, voice tight. "But they'll be scouring the citadel for us. We can't stay here long." Zorgax spat a glob of blood on the floor, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Should have known that weasel of an Overseer would worm his way out. Jesse shook his head, mind racing. The evidence they'd uncovered was damning. Financial records, secret communications, the full breadth of the conspiracy laid bare. With this, they could blow the whole thing wide open, but only if they lived long enough to spread the word. He pulled up his Omnitool, fingers flying across the interface. They needed allies, needed to disseminate the information as widely as possible. His old contacts in the press, the shadow networks he'd cultivated during his mercenary days, he'd call in every favor, pull every string. But even as he worked, doubt gnawed at him. The conspiracy ran so deep, the corruption so entrenched. Even with the truth on their side, would it be enough? A ping from his Omnitool pulled him from his thoughts. A message marked urgent. His blood ran cold as he read the words, a chill settling in his gut. "It's the Overseer," he said, voice hollow. "He's calling us out, says he's planted a bomb somewhere on the Citadel. Says if we don't surrender ourselves, he'll detonate it." Linux cursed, slamming his fist against the wall. Zorgax just laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Figures," the Krogan rumbled. "Bastard knows he's backed into a corner, so he's going for the big finish." Jesse's mind whirled, options and scenarios spinning out before him. They couldn't give in to the Overseer's demands. The moment they did, they were as good as dead. But if there really was a bomb... "All right," he said at last, voice tight with resolve. "Here's what we're going to do." They huddled together in the dimness of the maintenance shaft, three unlikely allies united by a common cause. Jesse laid out his plan, his words quick and clipped, brooking no argument. They'd split up. Linux would take the evidence to Jesse's media contacts, get the word out to every corner of the galaxy. Zorgax would rally what remained of his forces, prepare for the inevitable counterattack from the Cardassians and their allies. And Jesse, he'd stay on the Citadel, hunt down the Overseer, find the bomb and defuse it, or die trying. They clasped hands, a final moment of solidarity. No words were needed. They all knew the stakes, knew the price of failure. Then they were moving, each to their appointed task, each carrying the fate of the galaxy on their shoulders. Jesse watched them go, a grim smile playing at his lips. The odds were long, the danger great, but he'd spent his whole life fighting against the odds. This was just one more mission, one more impossible task. He checked his weapons, his armor, his tools, drew in a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Then he stepped out into the Citadel, into the heart of the conspiracy, ready to face his destiny. Jesse's heart raced as he split off with Zix, leading a hand-picked strike team deep into enemy territory. The Overseer's stronghold loomed before them, a dark monolith bristling with defenses. Jesse checked his weapons, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. Failure was not an option. Zix's fingers flew across his Omni-tool, overriding security locks and disabling traps. But even his skills were tested to their limits. Genetically engineered horrors stalked the corridors, all teeth and claws and relentless hunger. Jesse let his training take over, instinct guiding his aim. Tearing through the enemy lines, they pushed deeper into the stronghold, the Overseer's sanctum drawing near. Sudden movement in the shadows. A commando leapt from cover, a crackling energy whip coiled in his grasp. The weapon lashed out, a searing arc of plasma. Jesse braced for impact, but Zix shoved him aside. The whip struck the Geth's chest, his shields shattering. Circuitry burned, white fluid seeping from ruptured conduits. Zix crumpled, his single optic flickering. Alone now, Jesse forged ahead, the final confrontation waiting. He burst into the Overseer's inner sanctum, weapons primed. The Cardassian mastermind stood waiting, a cruel smile on his lips. "Welcome, Mr. Ramos," the Overseer purred, his voice silk and venom. "I've been expecting you." On the Citadel, Linux raced through the gleaming corridors, the Systems Alliance operatives fanning out behind him. The station had become a powder keg, primed to blow at any moment. They had to find those bombs, and fast. Linux's Omni-tool pinged with a new message, a lead. His contact had come through, pointing them toward a maintenance shaft near the council chambers. It was a trap, had to be, but they had no choice. The shadows moved. A dozen Cardassian agents emerged, weapons drawn. Linux cursed, diving for cover as disruptor bolts filled the air. They'd been played. The operatives returned fire, the narrow confines of the corridor becoming a killing field. Linux fought with cold precision, his mind racing. This was a diversion. The real threat was elsewhere. A sudden realization hit him, dread coiling in his gut. The Council. The bombs were a ruse, bait to draw them away, and they'd taken it. Linux barked orders, the operatives falling back. They had to reach the council chambers before it was too late. The doors to the chambers stood open, a lone figure silhouetted against the light. The Turian councillor, his mandibles flared in a triumphant grin. "Linux," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "I wish I could say I'm surprised, but you always were a thorn in the Overseer's side." Linux's grip tightened on his blaster. "It's over, Councillor, your treachery ends now." The Turian laughed, cold and cruel. "You have no idea what you're up against. The Overseer's plan is already in motion. The Citadel, the Council, the entire galaxy, all will fall before his might." Linux's eyes narrowed. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He lunged forward, the Councillor's guards moving to intercept. The chamber erupted into chaos, the sounds of battle echoing off the ancient walls. In the heart of the Overseer's sanctum, Jesse and the Cardassian tyrant circled each other, a predator and his prey. They clashed in a storm of blades and biotics, the Overseer's augmented strength matched by Jesse's raw human tenacity. The chamber shook with the force of their battle, sparks flying from shattered consoles. Jesse poured every ounce of his skill, his rage, his desperate, unrelenting will into the fight. The Overseer was fast, strong, but Jesse was faster, fueled by the memory of fallen comrades and the fate of worlds. In a final, brutal exchange, Jesse saw his opening. He lunged, his blade finding the chink in the Overseer's armor. The Cardassian staggered, dark blood seeping from the wound. Jesse pressed his advantage, hammering the Overseer with blow after blow. The tyrant's defenses crumbled, his augmetics sparking and failing. With a roar of triumph, Jesse drove his blade home, piercing the Overseer's black heart. The Cardassian convulsed, his eyes wide with shock and fury. But even as the life drained from his body, the Overseer's lips curled in a final, vicious grin. "You fool," he rasped, blood bubbling from his lips. "You have no idea what you've done." The Overseer's words trailed off, his eyes glazing over in death, but his final cryptic message echoed in Jesse's mind, a chill of dread creeping up his spine. The secrets of the Citadel, the ancient technology hidden within. What had they unleashed, and what price would the galaxy pay for their victory? As the Overseer's chilling words reverberated in Jesse's mind, he sprinted through the Citadel's winding corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. The station trembled beneath his feet, ancient technology stirring to life with a sinister purpose. He burst into the central chamber just as a blinding surge of energy erupted from the Citadel tower, bathing the room in an eerie glow. Linux, battered but victorious, staggered to Jesse's side, his eyes wide with fear. "The weapon," Linux gasped. "It's activating. We have to shut it down." Jesse nodded grimly, his grip tightening on his blaster. Together they charged towards the control room, dodging falling debris and sparking consoles. But as they neared their goal, a hulking figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. Zorgax, his armor dented and scorched, grinned savagely. "Fools," he rumbled. "Did you really think I would let you destroy what I've worked so hard to achieve?" Jesse's eyes narrowed. "You planned this from the beginning, the Alliance, the Overseer, it was all a lie." Zorgax laughed, a cruel grating sound. "Of course it was, and now the power of the Ancients will be mine to command." The Krogan warlord lunged forward, his massive fists crackling with biotic energy. Jesse and Linux met him head-on, their weapons flashing in the dim light. They fought with the desperate strength of those who had nothing left to lose, trading blows that shook the very foundations of the Citadel. But Zorgax was relentless, shrugging off wounds that would have felled a lesser being. His forces, hidden throughout the station, swarmed into the chamber, threatening to overwhelm the exhausted duo. In a moment of startling clarity, Linux locked eyes with Jesse. An unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of what had to be done. With a fierce cry, Linux charged at Zorgax, his blades flashing in a whirlwind of steel. "Go," he shouted over the clash of weapons. "I'll hold them off." Jesse hesitated for a split second, his heart wrenching at the thought of leaving his friend behind. But the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. With a final nod of gratitude, he turned and sprinted for the control room, Linux's battle cry echoing behind him. Tears blurring his vision, Jesse slammed his fist against the control panel, his fingers flying over the interface. The weapon's self-destruct sequence flashed across the screen, a countdown to oblivion. But as he moved to initiate the sequence, a terrible realization struck him. The Citadel was home to millions, a hub of galactic life and commerce. To destroy the weapon would be to condemn them all to death, to sacrifice countless innocents in the name of the greater good. Jesse's hand hovered over the controls, his mind racing. The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity of agonizing indecision. Save the galaxy, or save the lives of those on the station. The weight of the choice threatened to crush him. As the station crumbled around him, Jesse stared into the face of the Overseer, a ghostly apparition flickering in the chaos. The Cardassian's lips curled in a mocking smile, his words echoing in Jesse's mind. "You think this is the end?" the Overseer hissed. "Foolish human, the cycle will continue, the struggle eternal. Conflict is the true nature of the galaxy." Jesse gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Maybe so," he growled, "but as long as there are those willing to fight for what's right, there's hope." In the aftermath of the cataclysm, the galactic community reeled, struggling to come to terms with the destruction of the Citadel and the revelation of the Cardassian conspiracy. But even as they mourned the fallen and worked to rebuild, one man set out on a lonely journey. Jesse Ramos, scarred in body and soul, turned his back on the familiar, driven by a need to find meaning in the chaos. With the memory of his fallen comrades etched into his heart, he ventured into the unknown, determined to carry on their legacy and forge a new path in a galaxy forever changed. The story of Jesse Ramos was far from over, but as he embarked on his quest, he knew one thing for certain. The sacrifices of those who had fought and died beside him would not be in vain. He would honor their memory, and in doing so, perhaps find a way to heal the wounds that the Overseer and his machinations had inflicted upon the galaxy. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.